have finally made it to the last film in my Superman series. You guys know I've been reviewing a whole bunch of Superman related shit the last few months, and we have reached the pinnacle, the thing that makes the most sense in my eyes, reviewing Superman Doomsday. As you guys know, in BVS, Superman was killed by Doomsday, and Superman Doomsday is the animated DC film that is kind of a loose adaptation of the Death of Superman comic arc that came out in 1992. So this thing was directed and produced by Bruce Timm. You should know who that is if you're a fan of DC and the DC animated films, and this was part of a long line of animated films that DC came out with. It came out in 2007, and I was really excited to see it as somebody who admittedly has Death of Superman high up there on his list of favorite comic book arcs ever. So like I said, this is a loose adaptation of the Death of Superman comic arc. There is a beast that is found on Earth. His name is Doomsday. He's a big, mindless, ugly-ass beast. He starts destroying a whole bunch of shit. Superman, of course, has to try to stop him. They have an epic fight, and then Superman dies. He dies halfway through this movie, and so the rest of the movie is about dealing with the aftermath of Superman's death, and also dealing with his possible return as a new threat emerges, you know, led by Lex Luthor. I rewatched this film to prepare for this review, and I gotta say, I have pretty much the same feelings on it now as I did back then. Actually, I might be a little bit harsher on it now than I was back then. Back then, I thought it was awesome, and then I saw it a few more times, and I'm kind of like, you know what? They could have done a little bit better with this one. They could have smoothed some things out. You want to see Superman throw down with Doomsday. You want it to be epic. You want it to be awesome. How was the fight with Doomsday? That's the big thing that this movie is pitched on. It was actually pretty freaking sweet. It's honestly one of the best animated fights that Superman has ever had with anybody. It was epic. It was brutal. Superman was bleeding. He was throwing Doomsday all around. Doomsday was like literally the Terminator. Like, he just would not stop. They're fighting all over the city. Buildings are getting destroyed. Subways are getting crushed. Superman is getting his face pounded in. It is all-time epic, the fight between Superman and Doomsday. A lot of effective emotion that's conveyed during the scene too. There's this little girl who's about to get crushed, and Superman saves her, you know, by flying Doomsday up into the sky, and he basically WWE smackdowns Doomsday into the earth. Like, he just body slams the shit out of him. Doomsday dies. Unfortunately, Superman dies, or at least passes out from his wounds too. And I gotta say, the whole first half of the film, I think, is really effective, not only in terms of building up to the big Superman Doomsday fight, but also building some effective character drama in there too. Superman is with Lois, and he's trying to have this really healthy relationship with Lois, but Lois also has a bullshit detector in her nose, just like every woman in the world has a bullshit detector in her nose. She knows somehow that Clark Kent actually is Superman, but she wants him to admit it so that they can have some semblance of a normal relationship, and Clark, of course, doesn't want to admit it, and so this creates some interesting friction between them early on. I'll also give some special praise and shout out to Adam Baldwin, who voice acted Superman, and also James Marsters as Lex Luthor. They both did a really great job in this film. Usually when it comes to voice acting, I have a simple rule. I want the voice actor to capture that character. When I hear that character, when I hear your voice acting through that character and delivering the lines that that character is supposed to say, I need to actually believe that you are that character. You need to sell me on it. It needs to actually sound like something that character would say, delivered like that in the way that you said it. And I gotta say, from that regard, Adam Baldwin was perfect as Superman, and James Marsters was great as Lex Luthor. I also gotta give praise to the animation. The animation in this film was actually pretty damn good. The animation style reminds a lot of people of the Superman animated series or the Batman animated series from back in the day. It's similar. It's a little bit updated, obviously, because this came out in 2007 and those series are from the 90s. There's a couple of really weird choices that they make with the animation in this movie. For example, why the hell does Lex Luthor have a crease on his face? I don't really understand why there's this sharp-ass crease on Lex Luthor's face. His face literally looks like a perfectly folded pair of khaki pants. I'm serious, it just looks kind of odd. It also looks odd for Superman to have super wrinkles on his face for no really explainable reason. Hell, his face looks like it could use a crease. You got one person's face who looks like it was ironed a little bit too well. You got another person's face who looks like it could use a little bit of ironing. I'm not entirely sure why they made these little animation choices. I don't know, maybe they were trying to make Superman look older, maybe they were trying to make him look weathered, maybe they were trying to make Luthor, you know, look clean or ironed. Bottom line, I thought it was a weird animation choice. There are a few other ones scattered throughout the film, but those are the two biggest ones. They're not like, they don't break the movie or anything, but they're just kind of odd choices that I've never been able to explain to this day. I would say across the board, outside of Adam Baldwin and James Marsters, the voice acting is actually pretty good, with one exception. Lois Lane and Anne Heche, or whatever her name is, the actress who voiced Lois Lane in this film, I wasn't really sure that I bought her as Lois Lane, and it's just the way that she delivered her lines was was kind of awkward at times, and it didn't really sell me on her being Lois Lane. I can't really put my finger on it, but there's just something off about her as Lois Lane that didn't make me believe it or buy it for most of the movie. Like I said, when this movie focuses on the whole conflict between Superman and Doomsday, it's pretty awesome stuff. However, if you're a diehard comic book fan and you love the Death of Superman arc, this movie doesn't really have much in common with that arc other than Superman gets in a fight with Doomsday and they both end up dying. There's a whole bunch of shit from the comic that they decide not to do in this movie. They go in a different direction. The second half of the film kind of transforms into a completely different movie. It's a lot slower. It's a lot more boring. There's another Lex Luthor plot where he basically clones Superman's body and creates this evil clone who does his own bidding. The evil clone, you know, starts acting evil outside of Luthor's control, and then Superman gets resurrected. He comes back from the dead and he has to stop his evil twin. There's no escaping the fact that this movie suffers from some failed momentum. The second half of the film is really just not as compelling or as interesting as the first half. And in my personal opinion, this is proof of why Doomsday can't really be built around for an entire movie unless you're going to put all the extra shit that was in the comic in the movie. For example, next year I heard that we're getting an actual adaptation of the Death of Superman arc, and they're going to have the entire shebang, panel for panel, from the arc. I mean, that's pretty awesome. I'd love to see it. But this movie right here, this is proof of why if you just focus on Superman and Doomsday, you're not going to get the full benefit, the full fruition of that arc from the comic. Because overall, Doomsday is kind of boring as a villain. All he is a big, ugly, mindless monster. There is one reason and one reason only that we know who he is, and that's because he killed Superman. Outside of that, there's a fight with Doomsday, and that's all he's really there for, is to fight stuff. So after that's done, what else you got for me? The Luthor stuff, you don't really care all that much about. The evil clone with Superman stuff, sure, it's kind of weird to see Superman being a dick. That scene where Superman gets the lead thing out of his head, the lead explosive or whatever the hell it is that Lex Luthor put in his head, where he goes to the salon and he like uses his heat vision to lobotomize himself and get it out of his head. That was actually pretty creepy and pretty fun. But outside of that, there's really nothing memorable or interesting that happens in the second half that can match the intensity and the epicness of the first half. In that sense, this movie was kind of doomed to fail from the start, and as a result, I really don't think it's that great as an adaptation of the Death of Superman arc. It works fine on its own as an entertaining enough movie with decent animation, decent voice acting, some epic action sequences. Overall, guys, I can't go high on this one. I can't go low. I gotta kind of go somewhere in the middle. I'm gonna overall give this one a positive rating on the low end of Man of Steel, only because the first half of the movie was so good and then the second half was so mediocre. So Superman Doomsday, I'm gonna slap this one with a Man of Steel Golden Age. It's positive, but just barely. Alright, that is it. That is the end of my Superman series. Thank you guys so much. I will have links to all of my other Superman reviews below. I reviewed Superman the movie, Superman 2, Superman 3, Superman Returns, the final season of Smallville, and of course, Superman Doomsday. So you guys should check that out if you haven't already. I cannot wait to see Justice League. I cannot wait to talk about it. You guys are the best. Thank you so much for watching. And if you like what you see, tell me how you feel, and stay tuned to hear more from the Man of Steel. Peace.